I see your game, Trebek. Hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of the Post Credits Podcast. How we doing, Mr. Matt?
I'm great as usual. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing good. We've been laughing a lot.
Yeah.
Today,
I'm always good.
We are talking about the Brendan Fraser Mummy.
Yep. From 1999.
Yep. No, normally when we do a movie that's come out before, I always make the joke of like I watched the wrong movie, but I'm going to respect our audience for for the first time in 121 episodes and not do that.
Right. I mean, we could talk about the Tom Cruise Mummy, which I've seen.
Oh yeah, I saw that too on a plane. It was
Yeah. I saw someone live streaming it on YouTube.
Really?
Like during its release. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Amazing. No, it was bad. It's bad. I just love the technology,
Oh, that's that fast.
Yeah, taking it to Universal that way. Just be like, your movie's so garbage, we're gonna stream it right in front of you on opening weekend.
Well,
Illegally.
the problem is that this mummy was so good that they were never able to fully recover.
Oh, I'm glad you are going to be the champion and bastion of that feeling.
Oh, you think so?
And here's what I don't want.
Okay.
We're in this middle of this Brendan Fraser resurgence. He's getting talked about a lot. Like he's
Encino
been in
Man,
Doom
Renaissance
Patrol.
Man, if you
will. Yeah. The Encino Sans.
Yeah. Thank you.
And he deserves it. He deserves accolades. He's charismatic. I like him. But I've soured on this movie a little bit. But I'm going to be doing it in a delicate way. Usually you would hear me come on and shit talk a movie and trash it for what it is. And I'm not going to do that because I respect Brendan Fraser.
You can hear the clink as you're setting your knives on the desk for...
Yeah. But we'll get there,
Okay.
But I'm glad that you're going to be here. I know that you like this movie.
Yeah.
I have not seen this movie in probably 15 years, So, and I'll elaborate why I think I've soured on it, but that's for later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to jump off. We'll talk about some news and then we'll circle back and unwrap this mummy and get into it.
My theory is that they know it sucks and they just don't care.
They just want to get it.
Yeah, it's like
put it out and then get it out of the news cycle.
Right. Because in all honesty, like a movie this bad could affect stock prices. Well,
like I mean, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the stock market, but like literally anything affects the stock, especially this year. Good God. It doesn't matter. Everyone's losing money. Just to clarify, we are talking about Rob Zombie's The Munsters.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted people to have that little tidbit. It's kind of well known that we don't enjoy Rob Zombie movies in general. And
I mean, enjoy is a weird term. I don't think it's adequate. I don't think he should have a movie career. That's where I'm at. So I guess like byproduct of not enjoying so many things by him, so I guess the natural progression would be just leave us alone, leave our society alone and stop damaging my eyeballs. But yeah, the Monsters came out. Monsters. And did I screw something up?
No, we're going. We're live. We're doing this.
Yeah. The people have spoken about it. They say it sucks. So are the critics. They say it sucked too.
It's one of those rare... I mean, I guess it's not that rare, but like usually when a movie comes out and like there's a critical backlash, but then the audience reviews are actually, middling to positive-ish. And this seems to be pretty low. I saw someone gave it a 1.1 out of 5 stars.
Yeah.
I don't remember what that service was. Metacritic isn't enjoying it. Probably the best review I saw was IGN. And it was, I think the most fair sentiment that I'd seen on it as well is I wish I loved anything as much as Rob Zombie loves the Munsters, because his love for the characters and the material is apparent. However, and that's when it gets into kind of the, why is this 2 hours? It's really not funny. Just what's here, and
Yep.
that sucks. I think the Munsters have gotten a pretty bad run in pop culture, because
Yeah. Well, who's making the decisions, right? Why are they giving it to Rob Zombie? Did Rob Zombie buy the rights? I don't think he did. That would have been newsworthy,
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's
So
got something he can cross off his bucket list. Like, I got to make that
yeah, but
Munsters
who's
movie.
culpable? That's who's culpable. It's not just Rob
Who
Zombie.
knows?
Some guy out there that's like, yeah, let's do a Rob Zombie Munsters movie. God, eat shit. Oh God. And I'm not even a big fan of Munsters. It's triggering to see Rob Zombie above a fucking movie title, thinking like, oh yeah, this is on par with Wes Craven and John Carpenter and Toby Hooper. Like
Well,
they all get their fucking name above a title, and so does Rob Zombie. It diminishes the good actor or directors. You know what I'm saying? Like it says like they're not as good because we're in league with Rob Zombie. So
um, I just think it's kind of an ostentatious thing for people to put their movie, like their name above whatever, where it's like, this person present, like, director of. That's usually a marketing thing, and I feel like, you're trying to use, like, this horror director who's known for these kind of skeezy, like, make you feel dirty horror movies, for what you're marketing as a family comedy. So I don't see the name value there. Like the Devil's Rejects fans are like, oh my god, that Rob Zombie's Munsters, like, I can't wait for this. I don't see the value of that, even from a marketing standpoint. That's
well, they have to do it. They have to include his name because like who would be interested in seeing any of this if it wasn't fans of Rob Zombie? Like, I mean, like, look at you notice like I'm going to talk about a different director for a minute. I'm going to talk about M. Night Shyamalan,
okay.
and for a while, his name was always associated with the movie,
Yeah.
right? After Earth was the first one that was not because it's a shit show, right? And the marketing around that was like, oh, this is so bad. I feel like he didn't want his name involved. Like, it's so bad, we're not going to use this as a marketing gimmick. I don't think anyone would see Munsters if Rob Zombie's name was above it with how silly and dumb it looks. Anyways, I still believe that Netflix had the power play that's never been done before to just cancel it before it comes out. Tax write-off, pull a Warner Brothers,
Oh yeah. Don't.
Yeah,
Yeah. Another Batgirl situation.
yeah, yeah. One review I said the humor level is abysmal, makeup sophomoric, and the movie is the worst thing on Netflix. And they could be right. I mean, American Cyborg Steel Warrior is not on Netflix, so seems like by default
Not
it could be the
everything on
worst thing on
Netflix is
Netflix.
good. I mean, I don't know.
You're
I
downplaying this. Don't downplay how much Rob Zombie sucks at movie making.
Okay, that's fair.
We cannot give that person any rope, right? They just got to be in free fall for the rest of their lives. I don't give a shit. Anyways, that's all I got. Fuck you, Rob Zombie. I hate your movies. How about you?
What do I got for the news there? Or what do I have to add to
Yeah,
that?
yeah. No, you don't have to add anything. We're
Okay.
done talking about
I
Rob Zombie.
Okay, cool.
Because he sucks. So we're into it now.
Okay.
we're into it. Now, you've always loved this movie. How I've heard you talk about this movie, it's always been with high esteem.
It's always been positive, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to derail Because I know you really want this to be like a, you're the bad cop, I'm the good cop sort of
I
situation.
don't want it to be that way.
Oh,
I'm
oh,
trying not to be that way.
okay. I don't think it's going to be, because there are
Okay.
some things where, like, when I look at it, because I hadn't seen it in a long time either, and I just happened to see that they had this nice 4K disc that Universal put out,
Oh my,
and,
wow.
and I was like, I wonder how that looks in 4K, because one of the things, like, even in the era where I was like super about this movie, I was kind of like, some of that CG is, it's not so hot. Like, it's not awful. It's not the Mummy Returns, like the Scorpion King, like worst visual effects Razzie
Yeah.
Award level. It gets the point
Yeah.
across, but there was something about the materials where it wasn't quite photoreal.
Liquid seemed to be the biggest problem for CG for the longest time.
Yeah,
And it's
fluid
really
dynamics.
apparent. Yeah, it's really apparent in this one. But because of that, I the liquid effects, I'm like, man, it's already tough to do. So I'm not gonna be super critical of that. But it is dated for sure.
Hmm.
In the special effects.
There are certain things that I think do still look really good, like the scarabs.
Yeah.
I mean, like, especially when they're moving en masse. Maybe because there's just so much going on that your eyes can't really focus in on it
Yep.
and see the little characters. But so before we get like super granular talking about the movie itself, do you want to talk about like the lead up to them making the movie at all? Do you
I
have
actually
any?
don't know much of the lead up of it.
Oh, okay.
Some of my criticisms or stuff that I found has to do with like historical accuracy, slash, am I hesitant to be super
You mean
savage?
this isn't a documentary? Is that
Right,
what I'm
it's not
about
a
to find out?
documentary. So I don't know much about leading up to it. I do know this person, the director. What's interesting is I recently saw, this is a tangent, and I'm sorry to do this. I recently saw the Hellboy, the new one with David Harbour,
Hmm.
right? And it reminds me, it's so weird because I wouldn't have considered these types of movies a genre until I saw Hellboy, because that version is horrible, but it reminds me of this era of movie making, right? Where it's
Okay.
like this, the first round of X-Men movies, the first round of Spider-Man movies. This director also did Rise of Cobra, and Van Helsing.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
throw League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in there, Underworld, all those. But it's like this weird action movie off of like horror and science fiction that was happening.
Hmm.
But they never, it's all of them. I can't say it's a genre of movie, but they all feel the same. They all have like this 1 foot, like, we're gonna take this seriously, but they don't know how. That's the only best way I can describe it. But it's really interesting that this director who helmed this one is kind of responsible for that feeling of movie, you know? Because it's like this movie, same with X-Men, is like it feels they could have gone deeper and made it more compelling.
Hmm.
So there.
What's funny is that as we record this right now,
Hmm.
this movie is playing on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Amazing. Synchronicity. Why are
I
you watching the Sci-Fi Channel? We're recording a podcast. Why do
well,
you know that?
because I didn't watch the movie, and I secretly have it on in the background so I can pay it. No, I just when I looked up the Mummy, Brendan Fraser, just to like do a little bit of research on it. One of the first things that pops up on Google is like when it's on TV the next time, and I was like,
Okay.
holy shit, like we're going to be recording the podcast literally when that's on TV. I got to make a note of that because I don't think that's ever happened before. I just, hey, coincidence, right? Serendipity. So, yeah, Steven Summers definitely had a take on it that other people didn't, and it really got Universal excited about it because they had been trying to kind of kickstart the Mummy through through a lot of the 90s, at least, what did this come out, 99 or 2000?
Yeah, 99.
99. At least going back to 94 was one of the earlier dates that I saw. So people who had their hat in the ring or were approached to direct this, Clive Barker, Joe Dante, George Romero,
All excellent
Wes
choices.
Craven.
They're all
So,
like horror people. How did it land on Steven Song? Oh, because of the difference in ideas. They probably were all thinking of horror because they're horror directors, and he went action.
well, yeah, I mean they were trying to, it's the Mummy, it's, Universal monsters. This is what we're known for. How do we make them scary again? I guess is you've got Yummy Mummy breakfast cereal and, Count Chocula, and it's
Right.
like, they're just so inextractable from Scooby-Doo cartoons that, I think the problem is like, we have to reinvent these in a way that people are, it's going to speak to the culture, but it's also true to the thing. And I think that's a problem that a lot of remakes have a hard time doing. And I think we should maybe do a live stream on this at some point of just a topic of like, you know remake roulette, and just talk about the qualities of like remakes that, like, why do so many of these go wrong? Why do so many of them, some of them are actually better and exceed, not many, but very
Right.
few of them, what I like about this Mummy, and a lot of people don't, is that it definitely pays homage to the original movies, but it tries to also be its own thing in a very 1999 kind of way that was exciting, that the Men in Black audience would love to go see, kind of a thing. So there's that. But let's talk about some of the different approaches just real quick. I'll breeze through this. It
Sure.
won't be
No.
super long. I found this really fascinating, and I got to give a lot of credit to Mental Floss, because they're the one that put all this together, and because most of my information came from the internet and like the different commentaries on this DVD,
Okay.
which they did a good job talking about it, but they didn't talk about like the road to hell that led,
Okay.
that led up to it. And the
Yeah.
the reason that they didn't go with Clive Barker's approach, like there was a lot of like reincarnation. There was a lot of past life stuff in the various versions. Like Romero's version had Emote being scanned by an MRI at a, you know museum, and like that's how he came back to life, is it was like an X-ray thing. And
Well, that's horrible.
but then somebody that he came in contact with had a past life, and they were somehow related. I mean, they liked it, but they didn't make it because they thought it was too dark. I mean, I'm not even describing what his script
Yeah.
was. Like that's it in a nutshell. Because then he goes on and brings Karis back to life, and then Karis kind of becomes his like muscle. So as he de-ages, kind of the way that Arnold Vosloo does in this one, which was a big trope in the Mummy movies, is that the mummy comes back to life, and as he gets his revenge, he kind of, that's the whole reason he's kind of going after people, is sort of it'll kind of restore him, and he can't rest for that. Karis, I don't. Did you ever watch the original Mummy series, Universal
I'm
ones?
gonna I'm gonna tell you something. This is the only Mummy I've seen, except the Tom Cruise one. But
Okay.
I don't really count that
Yeah,
because it
it's.
sucks. No, so
But
this is the only Mummy I've seen.
okay. Well, and you've got that box set, that Universal Monsters, or no, you just have the collections of like the Dracula and the. Okay.
Yeah.
The only bad thing about that box set is that they took all of those single series and put them in there, so you get like 5 different copies of Abbott and Costello Meet
Right.
Frankenstein,
Right.
because they're just in all of those sets. But I digress. So in a way, Karis was the secondary mummy, because it was Imhotep, and then, or maybe I have that reversed. But either way, the two mummies were Imhotep and Karis, and
Okay.
that's really the only thing that this movie kind of throws out. is because it really takes the plots of those 5 Mummy movies and kind of merges them together. Now, the Romero plot that I was describing with like the love affair in the past life, it's kind of similar to the Clive Barker version, but they didn't make his because it was too perverted. Hey,
I can
Clive
only
Barker making
imagine.
a perverted movie? Like, geez,
Yeah.
you know. Joe Dante wanted to make kind of a big spectacle movie. I I think his lent a little bit more in the horror direction, but ironically, they turned it down because they thought that his movie would cost too much money. Joe Dante being the guy that directed Gremlins. For people who don't know, Gremlins, The Howling, very respected director in the genre. Ironically, they turned his version down, which was like a $15 million movie, and they only wanted to spend $10 million to make a $90 million movie because they liked Stephen Sommers' version so much. And they were
Bizarre.
and they were that confident that it would be a hit.
Yeah.
And it was.
That's
It
oh, it
it
was a
made a
huge
lot
hit.
of money. It spawned a franchise. It spawned a spin-off franchise, which is incredible that anyone went to see The Scorpion King based off. But it probably wasn't based off of how The Scorpion King looked in the second Mummy so much as like people liked Dwayne Still the Rock Johnson at that
Well,
point.
the Scorpion King was his first movie.
His first movie, yeah.
It was WWE to Scorpion King. There
Mm-hmm.
was no like I've done some other things. No, this was the catalyst for his stardom, which it seemed like another tangent. It seemed like this was not the intention. He didn't receive the intention of what it was supposed to be. It seemed like there was like about a 5 or 6 year period in there where it was just kind of like small part to small part, and then
Oh yeah, the
shot
Tooth
off to
Fairy.
stardom. Yeah.
Yep.
Be Cool. You remember that one? It was like the sequel to Get Shorty.
The Rundown, which is actually really good.
Yeah. So the Rundown was probably like a highlight in that career before it was like mainstream Dwayne.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, this was so successful. I know you're continuing, but yeah, this movie was so successful that they greenlit the sequel opening night.
Wow.
That there was so many transactions going on that they were like, oh my god, this is huge, so but then we got the
they
Mummy Returns,
yeah, which made enough money for them to make Rise of whatever the third one was called. I don't even remember the one that
Terracotta Warriors
was in the Himalayas.
No, it was in China. It had to do with Jet
Okay.
Li becoming a terracotta warrior, a real like terracotta clay he vomits out of his mouth, and then he becomes one of those warriors.
Mm.
I didn't watch the movie. I just watched a recap.
Oh, okay. I was wondering because I've
So
never seen that. I've only seen The Mummy Returns once, and I was like, I maybe it's just the first one that I like, and I just had no desire to see the third one.
We Want to Be Savages sometime. That's a movie we could put up in there because I've seen that one more than this one.
The Scorpion
This
King?
No, the
Oh,
second Mummy.
yeah, that's just yeah. Oh,
No.
Their Mummy Returns. I keep
Yeah.
thinking the subtitle is the Scorpion King just because that's when they introduce him. But yeah,
No, there is the Scorpion King. That is a movie unto itself.
yeah, and it's many direct video sequels.
Yes, which this director produced all of them.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if it's a gravy train and they just, hey, you want to produce this? Like, yeah,
Right.
sure. Just put your hand out and give me some money and I
Right.
produce this.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's basically a good point to hand it off and then go into. I think we've bored people with the history of the Mummy enough to get into talking about the movie.
Okay.
Where to
found
begin?
this movie. Well, I can start off with some criticisms. The amount of times that they say ancient Egyptian in this movie, I gotta say it's probably in the hundreds. It is uttered so frequently that you could make a drinking game out of it. And if you did, if someone took a drink of alcohol each time they heard ancient Egyptian, you'd be in the hospital getting your stomach pumped. I kid you not, it is the most annoying thing. And when I realized it was after like the fifth or sixth time, then I was like, I'm going to tune into that saying. I'm going to monitor how many times they say it. And it's a
And it was a lot.
frustratingly amount of high times, you know. At least I'm joking. It's hyperbole to say hundreds,
Yeah.
but I would say ancient Egyptian is uttered 40 to 50 times in this movie.
I'll have to pay attention to that because I
So
didn't key on it. There was definitely some like, when they're making a point about how Evie's character is this unrespected researcher about
yes.
ha ha I know all this and I'm so much smarter than
Right.
people give me credit for. Which I like Rachel Weisz as an actress. I feel like this movie, like I'm glad to see she's gotten to do other stuff beyond this, and because I don't know, like the character is probably something where I think a lot of that just like wild swinging there is, and I found a quote from Brendan Fraser. They're saying that they didn't know what kind of movie they were making when they were making it.
Oh,
Like they didn't like the actors. Like I'm sure Steven Sommer had his vision, but the actors weren't sure if they were making a romance, an action movie, a comedy, a horror movie. Because you hit kind of all those beats,
right.
and you just keep going through like all of them. And
Yeah, it
he's just
bounces
like,
around quite
we
a
did
bit.
not know.
That might explain some of like how it feels a little off in this
Mm,
movie. Maybe it's because it's coming through in their performances. Like I don't have a problem with the acting in this movie at all. It's more along the lines of like how the story is set up. And but I do have a complaint about one character, but it's weird to see because when I look at Brendan Fraser in this movie, I feel like it's another Indiana Jones. Right? Like,
hmm
and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like, that's kind of something that I want. And like reading people's thoughts on this, like what people had to say about this, there's a lot of that, like, oh, it's like another Indiana Jones. I don't see that. And I'm wondering if it's because like I don't take them seriously because it's kind of hard for me to read what these people are, like where their characters are, what they're supposed to be doing, what are their motivations, stuff like that. And because if you break this down and put it side by side with any of the Indiana Jones movies, it hits the same beats, right? But for some reason, like the Indiana Jones movies, they do it better. But I can't nail down what that better is, you
hmm
know? Um, so and then yeah, like Brendan Fraser's a charismatic person. And then like knowing what he had to go through to make this movie and what it cost him or the Mummy franchise in general. It's like he was really involved in these movies, like putting his body through a lot of shit that has had serious repercussions later in life, you
hmm
know? And I don't know. It's like seeing it, it's like that doesn't come across, and I'm bummed that it doesn't come across for me,
hmm
you know? Like, because it's like you look at like, it sounds so rude, and I hate to say this, but you think of like Raiders of the Lost Ark, and people think about, yeah, that crazy sequence where Indiana Jones is fighting all those Nazis on that truck, and he goes from crawling across the top to being inside the cab to being thrown out through the windshield, under the
Underneath
truck,
it.
back on the truck,
Uh-huh.
all that stuff. And it's such a simple set piece, but it's so memorable. I don't find that in The Mummy, you know?
hmm
So it some of it falls flat. I
You know what my favorite action sequence is when the boat's on fire and they all have to get off.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just that's what I remember most of, as far as like set pieces for this.
Yeah. Well, like it's just one of those things that I've noticed being this far detached from it, you know. And I think part of my problem why I say has soured for me is that it hit me at the age where it's almost like you're out of nostalgia. You're out of area or like a time where it had a greater impact as a kid on your life.
Mhm.
This was my senior year of high school, you know. You were already out, you know. Or maybe it was your last year of high school.
Yeah, it
I
depends
don't
when
know.
it came out because I graduated in
Right.
'99.
So I don't have that power of nostalgia. We've talked about that quite a few times. The power of nostalgia and what we think is good and what we don't think is good.
Yeah.
Uh, nostalgia can sway something that is kind of terrible into something that you love. Like
Mhm.
it's got that weird ability, and that's where I'm landing with it. So it's like a struggle for me. Um, I also don't like how Brendan Fraser solves all of his problems using guns. You know, it's like, hey, there's a critter on the ground. I got to shoot it.
Pa
Hey,
pa
there's
pa
a
pa.
mirror
Pa pa pa
that
pa
has to
pa.
be turned. I'll shoot that.
Mhm.
He shoots his gun a lot. So, but see, here's the problem. Now we're talking about this negatively, but you like this movie. You like it. So let's
I
start. Let's reverse course.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk about the positivity stuff because I don't want to sound like I'm a hater ass bitch. I have some criticisms, you know.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I think they're valid, but you like this movie. You've always told me you like this movie, you know?
Yeah, so this movie when it came out, I liked it a lot because it was a big fun adventure, and I hadn't seen any mummy movies at that point, so I didn't have the attachment to it. Some people that grew up with you, or maybe not grew up, but even just had reverence for the Universal movies. I don't know if I had seen anything other than Creature from the Black Lagoon at that point in my personal progression. So I didn't have any firm attachment to it, and it was like, oh, a mummy. Why is that interesting? Like big deal.
Yeah.
Like, we got zombies over here, man. Zombies are where it's at. Like that's cool. Like, what's
You
a
should have
mummy gonna do? So
take it back, Brian. We've had 20 years of zombies. Enough is enough.
enough is more than enough. Yes, it's time to lay that particular thing back to the grave for a little while. Let it rest, and then it can come back. But it just doesn't. But when I saw this, I thought it was really imaginative, and I still think it's really imaginative. Like a lot of the things that they put together, because they did things that they couldn't do in those old Universal movies. Now that I have seen those, it's really fascinating how I always thought, like, how there's that obnoxious trend in horror movies of bringing the returning characters back just to kill them off? Because it's like,
Yes.
that's the stakes.
Yeah, stakes are so high. Nobody's safe now.
Yeah. I mean, they used to do that in those movies where
Mhm.
but like in the Mummy series, like I swear every movie it feels like they bring back the people who lived through the last one. They get about halfway through this one, and then the other characters pick up the torch and survive, just to die halfway through the next one to
Okay.
because that story keeps going. And the parallel that I noticed here was you have those different groups of characters who were involved in different stages dying off, kind of at similar beats, but you do have a set of characters who can act as your through line that the audience can get behind. And I feel like that's something that the original Mummy movies never really had. So, as much as I want to blame Halloween 4 or Friday the 13th Part 2 for
I
bringing
was just
back the
going to bring those up.
heroine, bringing
Only
back
to
the
kill them.
heroine really unceremoniously, Nightmare on Elm Street 4 is even guilty of that with destroying the Dream Warriors cast. I mean, there is
So,
it's an obnoxious trend, but
yeah.
that goes all the way back to the 30s.
So it's interesting because, like, what we've talked about in Everybody's Time to Die, it's a bummer about, you know, uh, Bond dying.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Mhm.
But if it was a trend then, like it annoys me in Friday the 13th and Halloween because you like those characters. But it seems to be like that was a callback to like Universal Studios doing this stuff with the Mummy, with these other characters, and now it's like you see it in the '80s where it's like they were doing that to make the stakes higher, but now we're seeing it like full measure, like your favorite most awesome character gone. Like, so it's interesting. We're
Mhm.
kind of, maybe we'll get to a point where we just don't kill anybody anymore.
Yeah, I
You
we'll
know?
just come full circle and be back
Yeah.
to making
Yeah.
silent movies with Charlie
Yeah.
Chaplin-esque capering.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Uh, I also enjoyed, for the most part, the comic relief, because that, and I think one of the things that really made me like this movie is that the character of Benny, because
Oh my God. We're
you
gonna.
just hate him so much. And I feel like everybody's had that one friend who is just like trouble, just like Texas style with a capital T. And I'm not going to say their name, but I definitely had a Benny in my life growing up, and it was like, that's it, realized in movie form.
Maybe that's why I have a problem. I never had a Benny. I was allergic to people like Benny, and he annoys the hell out of me in this movie.
Hmm.
And I think it's because I never was around someone like a Benny, right? For me, I would have killed Benny immediately in a video game, right? Just throw him over the boat and shoot him when he's in the water.
Yep.
Like every sequence that he was in, I just wanted to punt him off the silver screen. I had such vitriol for Benny, and Benny is the comic relief. That's what he's supposed to be. And
Well,
I'm just like,
and
God
Evie
damn
and
it, Benny.
Jonathan. I mean, there's a
Yeah,
lot of different layers of comic relief here.
yeah. But you
He's
liked Benny. Like,
well, I didn't like the character, but he had his moments, like when he's, you know, like, hey O'Connell, I've got all the horses.
yeah,
Hey Benny, you're on the wrong side of the river, and it's like,
yeah,
that felt great to me. I also like when he's trying to ward off the mummy with like every different
oh,
religious
yeah,
token,
religious, yeah, yeah.
and it
I
just
did like
doesn't
that.
work.
That was
Yeah,
funny.
that's cool. And then when just, he's such a total shit through the whole thing.
Yes, it's
and
unrelenting.
and when he finally gets his comeuppance, where he's like going through, like almost gets crushed, the torch is going out
Yeah.
with the scarabs all closing in on him. Nobody deserves
See,
that more than Benny.
I agree, but they should have shown it. I want to see it. I want to see that brutal demise, not just a fade away,
there
fade out.
there was some like nasty stuff with the scarabs in here, like where it's going under the
Yeah.
flesh and everything, and they're like, you see it like under the guy's shirt.
Yeah, there was a couple of them, and then one of the sidekicks had it in his shoulder, and then Brendan Fraser's cutting it out with his switchblade.
Hmm.
There was the one random guy that fell on he tripped over his own shoelaces in the tomb and fell down, and then it was just 2 seconds later the bugs were on top of him. 2 seconds later he's just
Bones.
cartilage and bone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they were nasty. But still, I needed to see it. I need to know that Benny will never ever be in a Mummy movie
You,
again.
you need to confirm the
I need
kill.
closure
Yeah.
for what he did to my brain while watching this movie. You ever feel like that? I feel like you do. And I think we can relate to this, where there's like certain annoying characters in horror movies, and you're like, oh boy, how are they going to get killed? Because they're the worst.
Well, I mean, yeah, and
That's what I want to see.
yeah, and you definitely get that here. And I actually had a hard time watching him in Deep Rising, because he's like, the cool hacker guy or whatever he was in
Yes.
that movie. And
Yeah.
I was like, I'm sorry, like, you're Benny. I can't. I just
Oh, you like, wow, man, we are polar opposites on Benny. because I don't think I like him in Deep Rising because of this movie.
That's what I just said.
Oh,
Yeah, I can't get behind
oh,
that character because of how terrible
oh!
he is as Benny. I can't
I
appreciate
misheard
him,
it.
even though he's like supposed to be like the cool, I don't know, like
Yeah,
sidekick guy
yeah.
that the audience likes. That I
Well,
want to
you're
say that.
talking about Benny with a smile, though,
Well,
right? So
yeah,
it's giving me mixed signals because I think you like him, and then you're like, no, he's a piece of shit. But
yeah,
and then you smile about it, and I'm like, do you like Benny? Because I hate Benny.
because it's a character you love to hate.
Be like me, Brian.
It's it's a character you love to hate. That's why I'm talking about it with a smile. Some of
See,
the
I wish I
other
didn't hate him.
capering
There's,
though, because like Jonathan has his moments where I'm just like, ugh, this guy, you know.
yeah, yeah, he is frustrating too. But not. I think it might be because they're both there. I think if it was just one or the other, or if it's just one of them, one buffoon is enough, you know. But we got two of them. But Benny is more buffoonish than the other, So maybe that's my gripe. Too much is never a good thing, you know.
No, I
So
agree. I agree. So what did you enjoy about this? Well, I guess we didn't cover everything I enjoyed about it, but
yeah, no, you keep
aside
going. You keep
aside from
going.
it was a big action adventure movie, and I really liked that. I was all about the blockbusters at the time. I mean, I still am. It's just times have changed and everything's a Marvel movie or Top Gun or something, Mission
Right.
Impossible.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was very much in the. I think I said it. It appeals to that Men in Black crowd because you've got the fantasy and some levity. Maybe it's not as smart as Men in Black, but for a reinvention of the Mummy, it's
Here, here
it was clearly a winning concept for the time. Although I do agree with you that you know now that we're outside of nostalgia, there's definitely things where it's like, yeah, I don't know about this.
well, here's what I'll say also. Me not liking this this movie is a me problem. It's not a everyone else's problem. You know how it's like there's certain movies where you're like, how do you like that? Like how do you like this as entertainment?
Hmm.
I'm not that person. I can once again with Knives Out, Ready or Not, I can understand why people like this movie. So great. I just don't know why I'm disconnected from it. Also, here's another thing. I don't like how Rachel Weisz says blasphemers, not blasphemers. It's a gripe, but
Okay.
it's like someone saying espresso. There's not an
Espresso.
S. Yeah, it's ES. It's not
Yeah.
an X in there.
Or
It's not espresso.
etc.
Yeah,
Et
yeah,
cetera.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little problem. It is nitpicky.
And that's our grammar lesson for today.
Yeah.
Well,
No, but
let me
interesting
ask you
what.
this then, because this movie was your choice. What made you want to revisit this movie?
Well, because you always talk about how good it is. And I was like, oh, it's been so long since I've seen it. Maybe I just had a bad attitude. Maybe I was just an angry teenager, right? That was like, I don't like this movie. I had some angst in
At
me.
the time, you didn't like it even.
At the time I actually liked it more, but it wasn't considerably more,
Oh, okay.
uh it was one of those things when I saw it. It was a bizarre feeling because like I would say like my taste in music probably started or movies probably started after college, right? Because of you, because of our friend Scott, who were really into movies. It was like an exposure to a lot of movies I never even heard of, you
Hmm.
know? So that kind of like broadened my horizon, so to speak. Um, so like, but even when I saw it, I was not on board, but everyone around me liked it. So I was like, that's so weird. because I didn't really have opinions on movies. I can tell that there was a difference between how I look at a movie now as when I did then. Then it was like it was a hobby to go out and see and a social event with your friends. So it was less about the movie and more about hanging out with friends. But even then, I was like, man, I'm not on board, but everyone else around me is just loving this. So I'm not going to say anything bad about it.
Hmm.
So I was like, I wanted to revisit it because whenever you have spoken about it, I was like, oh man, there's got to be something there because you speak highly of it. And that's why I wanted to like, to me, it was going to be like, hey, let's go back and reevaluate something that we're not sure about. That's why I wanted to cover this movie.
Okay.
And it turns out I had the same feeling. It was like actually like I teleported 20 years back and was inside that old younger brain. Where I was like, yeah, I remember feeling this way when I saw it before.
Huh.
So it was interesting.
Yeah, wallpaper's still the
Interesting
same
to
in this room, huh? How about that?
yeah, yeah. So it's interesting to like go back and understand with a better reason why maybe I was not liking it to begin with, and be more like these specific reasons are why
Hmm.
I know I don't like this movie. I can say accurately that this is not a movie I'll own. Whereas, like, I think, and that sounds like really bad, but I just know that
Considering
this
some
is
of the other stuff you bought for this
yeah.
podcast, that's
Well, I bought some stinkers.
uh
I bought some bad movies. It's weird. That's also another conversation to have. It's weird to classify a movie as something I wouldn't watch again because that makes it sound like it's worse than all of the Leprechaun movies that I own, right? Like that I wouldn't buy this movie means that I am saying that the Leprechaun movies are better,
are better
you
by
know?
proxy, yeah. But no,
Yeah.
it's not
No,
not everything's created equal, you know. Not everything has to be a winner. I mean, I wouldn't put this up there as like it always like baffles me. Maybe not baffles me, but that people like you will run into those people who are like they've got a movie collection and it's like but every one of them's great, like I only buy the best stuff. And I just feel like, well, that can't be true because here's Michael Bay's Transformers or whatever, or the
of
Fast and the Furious
course.
Tokyo Drift or something like that, and it's all subjective, right?
It
um
really is.
I I like, for as smart as people always accuse me of being, I actually like trashy pop culture things, like I like big adventure
You and me both.
movies, and I'm supposed to be like the movie guy with this like refined opinion, sitting here with like my snifter of port, and yet here I have the 4K of the Brendan Fraser Mummy.
I do find that amazing that it's like it's the 4K. Like you invested more money. You
Here,
didn't find this in
well,
the $5 bin at Walmart,
here's the
you
thing
know?
though, is that I didn't own a 4K player quite yet, but I knew I was getting one, right? So it's like every movie that I was getting, if I was going to get it, it was
I did
going
that
to
for a
be
while.
the
Yep.
4K. So like I bought this and Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 4K at the same time, of both of those, because they were both movies that I only had on DVD, and I was like, I really want to see this on Blu-ray, but they come with the Blu-ray. I just don't have the 4K player yet, but oh, coming soon. And
Yeah.
watching that on the Blu-ray, because it was probably like 5 years ago that I bought that. Maybe not that long. I don't know. It was pre-COVID, which feels like
It feels like a decade
before
ago.
the world ended, right?
Yeah.
It's like
This
in
is a this is a post-apocalyptic
yeah, it's like in
4K purchase.
it's like in Fallout, how they talk about like the pre-bomb days, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever, the point of history no one can remember. That's basically where we're at right now, and in about 10 years it'll be Mad Max probably. But anyway,
Australia for sure.
but even watch even watching this on Blu-ray, I was like, I wonder how some of these effects are going to look in 4K.
I can
Spec-
only imagine.
Specifically because some of the holes in them actually looked pretty good when it was actually Arnold Vosloo walking around in his kind of like second, I don't even know what stage it is. It's like second or third stage. He's killed a couple people. He's like back a little bit, but he's still kind of zombie-ish. Some of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff looks pretty good, but when you first see him and he's like full on mummy, like that's pretty cartoony looking. And
With the
then
eyes and the jaw moving around. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna scream now.
and then like the wall of sand that they're shooting with the airplane,
Yeah.
that looked kind of like early CG stuff, but
Problem solving though. Shoot it. Shoot it.
it's I guess what else are you gonna do? Because it still got him in the end of it. It was fruitless,
Yeah.
but no, I mean,
Yell at
it
it.
just reinforces your yeah, right. Let's sky fuck the monster coming Rambo
Yeah.
style.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't miss that about action movies. Is like just like screaming, firing a machine gun, or blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so the besides like the legacy that this movie has, we already talked about that a little bit with
Right.
this franchise that it spawned. Um,
In
you know,
all
you,
honesty. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
well,
Sorry.
I just want to touch on this very briefly because we've only got a few minutes left here. But you mentioned the danger that Brendan Fraser was actually in and that he put his body through.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
it's pretty nuts.
did,
Yeah.
did you know in the jail scene when he was being hung, like he actually
Had to
passed
be
out?
resuscitated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He almost
He,
actually died filming that.
yeah. Yeah, it's like you think of these movies, these adventure movies as they're just actors. They're just acting. And you don't realize like some of the problems that the actors in these roles face post movie, right?
Hmm.
And so like Brendan Fraser has had back problems, multiple surgeries from this franchise, from stuff that happened in this franchise and in like the George of the Jungle movie before that was the movie before the Mummy, before like Brendan Fraser went to the stratosphere, right?
Hmm.
And so he says like by the Mummy 3, I don't remember the subtitle of that one, like he was basically like putting on an exoskeleton. He was putting on crash pads for like BMX racers and like knee braces and wrist guards and stuff like that because
Hmm.
his body had already taken so much abuse. And then like post Mummy movies, he spent 7 years having multiple surgeries, you know?
Wow.
And it's just like I can't even imagine like I think of like some of the dumb shit I did in high school sports that I'm still kind of living with, but nothing horrible. But
Yeah.
it's moderately annoying,
Hmm.
And to hear like what he had to go through, it's just wild. And and I and the reason that I struggle with kind of really shit talking this movie, and I feel like I'm kind of half in, half out with saying I like this movie and being super critical of it, is kind of I don't want to go through that down that road because it's like it feels weirdly disrespectful because of what he went through
Hmm.
and like on as well as him having like a resurgence which he deserves. I hear like his performance in The Whale is supposed to be good. I don't know if that's a movie I'm going to like, but good for him for
Yeah.
getting these accolades. And then it should have also happened with Batgirl,
Right.
um and but then also hearing like his past troubles and how like I don't know, it's kind of like one of those warning signs that maybe we should treat human beings a little bit better. So there was like this meme that was created of him crying on the red carpet. He was at he was promoting a show he was on, right? He started breaking down on like the red carpet. He was crying, but he was
Hmm.
in an interview. But like come to find out his mom had passed away like 2 days prior. So he's still in this
Wow.
like grieving moment, but we don't know that. We don't know like what he's experiencing,
Sure.
right? So everyone's like making fun of him for like, why are you crying in this interview, you psycho, And he's like, well, he was experiencing like a great loss for him.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you compartmentalize that when you're supposed to be doing a job? his job was to promote the show that he's on, and suddenly he's, not in the best mental state. And I say that because maybe I shouldn't put so much negative shit out in the world. That's what I'm trying to say right now.
That's
Long story short,
yeah.
it's like we don't know where some of these people are coming from. Maybe their behavior on the outside looks strange, but maybe there's a reason behind it, So,
I think that's the correct takeaway from that, because you never know what's going on with someone. And for whatever reason, like, we as people just have this tendency to make assumptions about other people's intentions. Or it's like with Fright Night, right, where it's like we were both talking about this like made up quarrel we had with Colin Farrell because of Daredevil or something.
right,
And
right.
it's like they're just people too, and it's yeah, no, I think not rushing to judgment is a good thing
Yeah.
in those cases. And just like, maybe just before you fire off that hot take, just think about, like, maybe just sleep on it, see what comes out
Yeah.
by tomorrow.
Yeah. Except Benny.
No, Benny can burn
Benny
underneath
still gets it.
Hamanatra with the scarabs.
Yeah, no, it kind of puts things in perspective, because I've always liked Brendan Fraser regardless of what he was in,
Mm-hmm.
and it just he was so private. It's a shame that so many people had treated him poorly for reasons that he wanted to keep private, and
Mm-hmm.
the reasons that he kept things private uh kind of divorced us from having an understanding of why things were happening, but then it also gave us leverage to make fun of them. I'm saying we as like society.
Or the
And
internet or whoever. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's kind of why I'm in this mode of like,
So,
yeah.
final thoughts then. You just didn't
Here's what
enjoy
I'll say.
this at all?
I don't like it, but I think it's also a great movie for kids. I'll put it that way. Like, I think I would be able to show this movie to my nieces and they would enjoy it. I think
Mm-hmm.
they would get a kick out of this. So I think it has its place for sure, but I don't think it's for me. That's the best way I can say it.
Yeah. Now that's fair, and I agree. I also think it's a great movie for kids. I think that's part of why they went with the concept that they did with wanting to make it PG-13, because it's the Mummy, but they had discussions about how do we make him not like there's only so scary we can make him because it's a PG-13 movie.
Right.
And I think it really owns that PG-13 movie rating. And I think it worked well for the time, and they were never able to recapture that, because man, did they try with Van Helsing. And wow, like, I was kind of hyped for that, because
Van
I
Helsing?
because I liked the Mummy.
Yeah.
And I was like, this Steven Summers guy, like, anything he does, like, I'm gonna pay attention to. Because I had seen Deep Rising after seeing The Mummy, and despite Benny being in it, it's like, yeah, I like this. It's fun. It's but I guess that's kind of his thing, right? Like, fun adventure movies with a bit of a horror element to them. And I didn't really have the vocabulary to put that together at the time. So then along comes Van Helsing, and I don't
Yeah.
want to. I don't. Maybe if we hate ourselves, we should do that one time.
I own it.
But you won't own this movie.
Listen,
You
I
own
got to
Van
defend
Helsing,
myself a
but you
little
won't
bit.
own this
Yeah.
movie.
So after I watched Hellboy, Hellboy threw me into so many different directions, and I don't know why, but because it's just it's really bad. I don't like it.
The David Harbour Hellboy.
Yes, I like
Okay.
the Ron Perlman ones.
Yes.
So don't hate me,
Okay.
internet.
Just
So
clarifying that. Yeah.
of this theory that I had of these undefinable genre movies that came out in the late 90s to mid 2000s, I went and purchased League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and Van Helsing on top of like on the heels of seeing Hellboy, because I wanted to make sure if my memory was correct. And it was. They do all feel like it's the same movie. Like the same type of people made the movie, even, you know? So,
Wow.
but they're not, I will not recommend. See, I can recommend Mummy to people, but I'll never recommend Van Helsing or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen to anybody
Anybody.
ever.
Steven
I feel
Summers
like
did League
people
of
have invaded
Extraordinary
my
Gentlemen?
privacy by no. What's that?
Did Steven Summers do League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
No, no.
Okay.
But it is all part of this theory that I have that Hollywood wanted to keep remaking the same type of movie, and they
This
just kept doing it with other properties.
this
Yeah,
monsterverse kind of.
yeah, because they're kind of funny, kind of actiony, but they never do it justice. You know, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I,
A lot of
yeah,
those, in trying to do everything, they wind up doing nothing well.
right.
I think this movie does several things well, although the writing and kind of the capering of the characters kind of, I don't think that quite holds up. But you know, I do think I agree with you. I think it's a good movie for kids.
Go, Brendan Fraser. We love you.
We do
Keep
love
doing.
you. Release Batgirl, for God's sakes. Just
Yeah,
finish it. It's done. Don't let it be some $90 million tax write off. Like, I mean, what a
that's a
shame.
shame. It's a shame.
I was actually looking forward to that. I said that in one of the news segments of the thing, and yeah.
Me too.
And this is the movie that made me a fan of Brendan Fraser, because I didn't like Encino Man.
For me, it was Airheads.
I feel like because other people I knew liked it, so it was like one of those things where like so many people were like, "You got to like this thing," that I kind of turned on it, because you know
Oh,
it's like
you still
whatever
do
that
that.
yeah, I know, I do. I'll do it right now. If you give me name something, tell me something's good, and I'll push back. No, but yeah, but it was one of those things where I had some made up quarrel with the actor in it, and through no fault to their own. But he won me over, and I was excited to see his comeback. And
Well, I'm glad it's still happening, to be honest with you. I'm glad,
yeah,
like, it didn't stop, like, that Batgirl's is no longer, that it stopped his career again,
mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy about that, that he's more powerful than that. Powerful, Brendan Fraser. All right.
So in short, watch this movie. Do not watch the sequels or Van Helsing.
Yes.
Okay, we agreed on something.
The exact quote was that George Romero's decision to produce a color remake of this disturbingly frenzied 1968 zombie fest has to rank up there with New Coke. That's apparently George Romero giving the go ahead to remake his movie is just as bad as Coke making New Coke.
Well,
so I don't know which one of those statements is more absurd, you know?
Yeah.